Welcome to the very last video blog of my 50s. That's right, my dear friends. In less than 1 week, I hit the big 6-0. As many of you know, I like to celebrate my birthday every day for the entire month of December and going into January maybe. And this year will be no different. Of course, there will be a few officially sanctioned birthday events along the way, like a dinner at Chokran, my favorite BYO restaurant in the entire city of Chicago, which serves the most delicious Moroccan food. I'm sure there will be a few happy hours along the way as well. Who knows? I may even take in a play. I love seeing performances at the Goodman Theater and have written a number of vlogs along the way about some of those experiences, like Goodnight Oscar with Sean Hayes, for example. In fact, when I take a moment to reflect on my life as I approach this 60th milestone birthday, I sometimes think of my life as it's been divided into 3 acts. If I had to name those 3 acts right now, this is probably how I would name them. Act number 1, finding strength. Act number 2, accepting softness. And act number 3, connecting with spirit. When I look back on the early years, especially when it comes to my diagnosis with multiple sclerosis at age 15, I really didn't have much of a choice but to learn how to be strong. Resilience and tenacity were 2 traits that I needed to embrace the most to develop the mental and physical strength that I would need to reach this stage of my life at 60 and still be thriving after living with MS for almost 45 years. That strength served me well for a long time. That strength got me through college. That strength taught me to train my body so that it would be less impacted by the MS through the years and connected me with things like Bike MS, my yoga practice, and tons of friends who share a passion of fitness and well-being. Strength helped me establish myself in my adopted home city of Chicago as a single woman living on my own, which was something some people predicted I wouldn't thrive at as I have. And boy, did I have some fun in those early years in Chicago. If you know me well, you know how much I like dining out with friends. One of those groups of friends from the earlier years was affectionately known as the Restaurant Mafia to those of us in the group. I remember how we would jokingly give out what we called our Mafia stars as opposed to the slightly more well-known Michelin stars. One of my favorite 3 Mafia star places back in the day was Tucci Milan. And coincidentally, I actually even worked there for a hot minute. Let's just say that despite all my strength, taking someone who has cognitive functioning issues due to MS and putting them in charge of running the door of a busy restaurant is probably not the best recipe for success. I probably could have single-handedly turned Tucci Milan into a 0-star restaurant if I lasted much longer. So after a few weeks of training and a week on the floor, I was politely asked to consider a different employment option. And we all know what that means. Even though I didn't forge a career in the restaurant business, that strength did help me in so many ways. It even helped me to say enough is enough when I found myself trapped in a marriage that was definitely not in alignment with my best self. I am forever grateful for the strength that I learned from the many wonderful mentors I've had in my life and from the strength that came from within me. At some point, though, strength by itself doesn't always get you to a place of balance in life. I think it was somewhere in my mid to late 40s that I began to understand the importance of balance between strength and softness. Finding that balance means sometimes learning how to change the pace of life when necessary instead of just pushing through. In fact, I'm noticing that this month's vlog is going to be a bit longer than normal, which can be challenging for me when I record them. So I'm going to change the pace and hit pause for a minute. Hey there, me again, about that act number 2. So like I said, over the last 10 to 15 years, I've gradually learned more about what it means to be in the flow. Power does not always require force. And thanks to a lot of good work, a lot of good therapy, and a lot of good coaching, my ability to be more in the flow continues to improve. I think it was about 10 years ago that I decided to try to go back into the workforce, and I got a job at a retail store in the Gold Coast, close to where Tucci Milan used to be. I learned a lot about myself during those couple of years that I worked in that store. I learned a lot about acceptance. I learned to be at peace with the circumstances that were out of my control. I learned to slow down and let the game of life come to me, and to be a bit more graceful about myself as my body continued to change through the years. I still enjoyed my social life and time with friends, but I didn't feel the need to be involved in everything all the time like I did when I was a younger version of myself. And that's kind of what I mean when I talk about softness. It doesn't mean that I become soft as opposed to strong. It's not an either or. It just means that I learned that sometimes strength comes from acceptance and softness. And that's the beauty of it all. And that was the underlying theme of Act 2 of The Life of Emily. Balance and flow. Now, if I had to pin down a time when I started a transition from Act 2 to Act 3, I'd have to say it was somewhere between the time of the pandemic in 2020 and the time of my father's death 3 years ago. Who would have ever thought that our world would be turned upside down as much as it was in March 2020? I went from being a highly social creature who socialized with as many people as she could on a regular basis to being in a small pod of people who hung out together trying not to get COVID. And I think we all know how that turned out. We couldn't go to restaurants, so we had small dinner parties instead. In the process, I started to learn that life was a lot less about quantity, I should say, and it was a lot more about quality. That certainly makes a lot more sense. And then, of course, my dad's passing was a crash course in learning how to connect to spirit in a way that I've never connected before. I've always considered myself a very spiritual person, and my faith is unbelievably important to me. But it wasn't until my dad left his body that I truly understood what it meant to be in an ongoing relationship with somebody who didn't have a body. That to me has been one of my greatest lessons of my entire life. I think I'm going to pause again and reflect on that for a moment. I invite you to do the same and think about the people in your own life that you call on for faith and support in times of need. Well, that was nice. Okay, so back to my life and act number 3. Even with a slower paced life, even with the pauses, none of this means that I don't still like to do things. In fact, I just got together with the old restaurant mafia gang a couple of weeks ago. We went to my favorite BYO restaurant that I already mentioned once in this video blog, Shokran. Recently, a friend of mine asked me what I like so much about Shokran. Well, that's easy. The food is terrific. The service is really good. But the thing that keeps bringing me back there is the fact that the manager really knows how to take care of me. When I was setting up my birthday dinner, he said, "I only do this for you, Emily." I'm sure he says that to a lot of other people as well. But the truth is that every time I'm there, he makes me feel like I'm the only person on the planet. What a rare and special gift that is. With each passing year, I think a little bit more about what it means to be taken care of. For many years, I thought the only possibility of me getting taken care of was going to be in my later years, was going to be in a committed relationship, a marriage. Yet, I look around. While it's nice to have a committed partner, that doesn't guarantee anything when it comes to being taken care of. I am so truly thankful to be taken care of by all the people in my life. My family, my medical care team, my friends, my emotional support team. As I get ready for Act 4 of my life, the only thing I can think of naming that fourth act is joy and gratitude. I was very fortunate that my parents gave me a middle name that really speaks to who I continue to work towards becoming in this lifetime. Emily Joy Greenberg. So as I approach my actual day on the 18th of December, I show up every day with a heart full of gratitude. I'm grateful to every single one of you who have walked the path of life with me, whether it was for a few steps or for many miles. You've all had an impact on me in your own special way. I originally hoped to publish my memoirs on or before my 60th birthday, and while that hasn't happened yet, I'm getting closer and closer to making it a reality. And I am positive it's going to happen at some point in my 60th year on this planet. Until then, I'll keep showing up every month and sharing my stories right here. In between those stories, I look forward to breaking bread with you or raising a glass with you if we're in geographical striking distance. And if not, I look forward to connecting with you in some other way. Connecting deeply in spirit does not require that we be in the same place at the same time. And that's the lesson that my dad keeps teaching me every single day, even if he can't be here to give me a hug on my birthday. Happy holidays to you all. Happy birthday to me. May your season be filled with joy and gratitude, and I look forward to being here with you again in January 2026. Happiest of holidays, and ciao ciao for now.